Okay, we are live, but we got to let it breathe just for a moment while we bring on Facebook. Get things a cooking. Can't wait. It's going to be a gas. Hope everyone is having themselves a great Thursday evening, and it looks like we are good. Welcome in, everybody. It is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, and with me, my fellow football priest, who you know, who you love, Zack Kelberman. Zack, Sean Payton surprised everybody by cutting the players loose, so to speak, a day early, canceled the final practice of minicamp, which officially begins the brutal 6-week NFL summer. But what implications, if any, does this decision have, Zack, on where maybe Bo Nix stands with things?
I think we talked about this about a week ago that Sean Payton could cut minicamp short in lieu of a field day. I mean, it's so common nowadays, Chad. A bunch of coaches around the league did a similar thing. I'm pretty sure didn't Hackett have a field day in 2022 for the last day, so it's very commonplace now. But if you did want to read into it, one inference is that he's okay with the development of the quarterbacks, namely Bo Nix. He likes where the progress they made so far, and he doesn't, feel the need to have an extra practice where they don't necessarily.
Dude, memory is like, it seems like he did this last year too, his first year as a Bronco head coach. Maybe I'm tripping. You guys, some of you have far sharper memories than me when it comes to maybe like recent history. Tell me if I'm tripping, but I think, Zack, it's mostly positive implications here relative to where things stand with Bo Nix. And I think you go to what Joe Lombardi, offensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos, said earlier. Well, I guess it was yesterday on where things kind of stand with Bo Nix. This is what he said, quote, I would say how he compares, and this is him answering a question like this, Zack, how does Bo Nix compare to other rookie quarterbacks you have coached? Mr. Lombardi, quote, I would say you could feel his 61 games played in college. With experience, a calmness comes along with it. So he certainly doesn't feel like a rookie. He's learning a brand new system. So whether you're a vet or a rookie coming in, that's common to all these people. He's seen a lot, doesn't make the same mistake twice very often. There is a maturity level. I think when you draft a guy who is a little bit older, you hope that it comes with it, but he's certainly shown that, close quote. But Zack, even though this is far from like hardline evidence that the Broncos are tickled and the Bo Nix doesn't need that day, I do think it's just all part of kind of the positive milieu, the momentum. It's all pointing in one direction, and that is Bo Nix.
Yeah, these comments were two words to me: unsurprising and expected. Because Bo Nix coming out of college, Chad, he's been as advertised so far in OTA practices, minicamp. You like what you see, and also unsurprising because it's June. What else is a positional coach like Lombardi going to say? Like I mentioned earlier, around the NFL, it's sunshine and unicorns right now. Everyone has aspirations of winning a title. We'll see in training camp if the tune changes, though I don't think it will.
Papa Bear with the very first super chat of the night, as he is wont to do. We were a little bit late this time getting our stream set up, but yet he's still in there throwing down a super before we even go live. So thank you, David. We love you, big dog. He's saying good evening to everybody, and he's keeping his hashtag game on point. Hashtag Bonos, Knicks for 6. But he says here, Zack, tired of the negativity on Wednesday. Now, what was the negativity? I'm not exactly sure. Normally I'm listening to every MHH podcast, not only for the same experience y'all have, edification, entertainment, and all that, but, quality control. I was tied up with some things last night. I didn't catch the boys on MHI, so maybe that's what he's addressing. I don't know, but maybe it's Cortland Sutton stuff, because I know that was kind of what their episode was geared around. I'm not sure. Tell us more, David.
Yeah, Scott's saying that maybe it was the MHI episode. I didn't watch it personally, and I can't speak for those guys. I mean, they have their opinions as we do on this show, but we tend to be a little more, I think, on the optimistic side, Chad. We're realists, but we like to not douse our followers and listeners in negativity. There was also a couple other media outlets that painted Bo Nix's practice as something of a negative step, that he was a little more erratic or whatever. But David, just tune into the podcast and the news that you want to hear. Hopefully we provide it for you on the MHH podcast.
You ever heard of a genre of music called meaning wave? Meaning wave. It's an electronic kind of music. Anyway, been into the Joe Rogan podcast for a long time. And one day I was like Googling, or searching on YouTube for some specific Joe Rogan clip I was going to show my friend. We were having this conversation. No, you talked about whatever. I'm trying to find it. And this video pops up based on whatever keywords I used. And it was like a Joe Rogan music video. I'm like, what? So I click into it. And this artist, I forget his name. Anyway, he takes like sections of Bo Nix, of Joe Rogan talking. Okay. And then like puts it to music in a way that is rhythmic and then also oddly melodic. It's weird. But this one song, if you guys search it, it's basically about can't catch a break guy. Like stay away from the can't catch a break. The people who are always saying I can't catch a break, the negativity, because it's kind of cancerous and drags you down. I don't want to hear it, basically, is what he's talking about. And this has nothing to do with the boys last night. Because again, I don't know exactly what he's speaking to, but just generally negativity. Get the heck away from me. I don't suffer that, dude. That'll suck the soul out of you, So even when things are dark, Zach, and there's not much to be positive about, still going to search for that silver lining. You might call it gallows humor. You're about to be led to the noose, but you're, cracking wise with the guy who's going to follow you behind. Something like that.
It's also the problem with the upcoming 5-6 weeks off now is it's hot take central. There's nothing else going on, so people are going to have to stretch for their narratives. But David, just stay in tune with us, and we'll keep it straight with you.
Most definitely. We also have Sam Bam jumping in. What's up, my friend? So good to see you. A legendary mythical figure here at MHH. He says, evening, guys. The season is starting to creep up a little. 12 more Thursdays to go until the Baltimore KC opener. Anyhow, go Broncos. Yeah. Yeah, the next 6 weeks suck. It's kind of brutal in terms of like there's just nothing happening. You don't, Zach, want things, like for what we do for a living, trying to find interesting Bronco-related topics and storylines that are newsworthy to bring to our audience. Sometimes you're out there really searching during that 6 weeks, right? Like we're pulling out our magnifying glass. We're like, searching all the different message boards. Is there anything good out there? But you don't want to find the one thing that's always going to be newsworthy, which is like arrests over that time. So knock on wood. Let's just hope every Bronco keeps their nose clean over this next 6 weeks.
Yeah, what was it? Aqib Talib years ago shooting himself before training camp, Chad, or
in a park in Dallas.
Jesus, man, it's been a long journey.
Yeah, but Sam, love you, big dog. We got the Ronk jumping in. Michael Ronquillo saying good evening, Chad and Zach on the MHH podcast. Go Broncos. Mile high salute right back at you, my friend. Love you, Mike. Thank you, big dog. Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit here. I want to talk, Zach, about some of the things that have been discussed over the last couple of days with Payton and some of the other coaches and players at the podium. But before I get to anything specific on that front, as far as quotes, I wanted to ask you, this kind of triggered an honest, introspective, wow, could this be moment for yours truly, when I was getting an Eric Trickle article today up and rolling, getting it published, and it's kind of a Outlook 20, profile Outlook kind of article. And do you think Javonte Williams roster spot is locked? Do you think he's a lock for the roster?
I don't see many locks on the Broncos roster right now, Chad. Not to answer, a question with another vague statement, but Javonte has to show that he can get back to pre-injury form. If so, great. But his only positive attribute, and I love the guy, was running defenders over. He doesn't have the best speed. He doesn't have the best vision. He had power, and he lost a lot of that last season. If he can get it back, he'll hold a place on the roster. But this could be a situation where they deploy 3 or even 4 running backs in that backfield, like the early 2010 Saints. They're going to have a lot of usage with a few different players.
I gotta say, I just don't want to see him running into the back of Quinn Miners and Ben Powers and whoever the center is, like 3 out of every 4 carries, and what's crazy about it, Zach, is, he deserves such massive props, Javonte Williams, for overcoming and returning to the field so quickly after a multi-ligament knee injury.
100%.
So it was his knee got hurt, not his eyes. You know what I mean? Like, what's up with his vision last year? So I hope the coaching staff is able to help him improve that, because now that he's got 2 years basically under his belt since the injury, I think he could be primed for a big year. But Broncos did send him a message somewhat, Zach, even addressed this. There's a video, in fact, on our YouTube channel and on our website addressed kind of the competition that's been added. The Broncos sent him a message bringing in Audric Estime. But Phil, brother, thank you for bringing this up. Another big news item saying, good evening, Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott. What's the story on Andre Smith? Buckham, MHH for life, Broncos for life. The Broncos signed a linebacker, Zach. Break it down.
Well, first of all, to put a bow on Javonte really quickly, the Broncos sent him 3 messages, Chad, if you think about it. They picked up Blake Watson. I know different skill set, but also a running back. And they kept Samaje Perine, who is kind of a similar skill set to Javonte. So he's going to have to definitely earn his place. The thing with Andre Smith, career special teamer. He was a 2018 7th-round pick. He's on his 5th team since then. So, make of that what you will. He is going to help out on the third side of the ball. He's not going to be a defensive contributor. He's an inside linebacker. I don't see him competing for a starting role, Chad. Though, if he shows well, could be a situation where he pushes another special teams linebacker, Justin Sternad, off the roster. That's the competition I see for Andre Smith.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a little bit of a hedge. But, it wouldn't be a total, not to derail our conversation too much on Javonte Williams, but, like, I know this was this was basically, Zach, 1 year before you joined the Bronco beat. But the Broncos drafted a total workhorse of a back in 2013 in the second round named Monte Ball. Everybody remembers this cat. Hopes were high. He had a decent rookie year. Second year, not so good. It turned out, of course, behind the scenes that he was struggling with an alcoholism issue. Nobody knew that externally. That was 100% kept under wraps, and he didn't even reveal it till years after he was no longer a Bronco. But it was a big surprise. Gary Kubiak, going into that first year as head coach, you make the final roster cuts, and among them is your third-year former second-round pick running back Monte Ball. Now, big difference between those guys is we have no reason, Zach, to believe that Javonte Williams has any kind of massive character flaw in the same way or addiction issues or whatever that derailed Monte. But still, it does show you, just like even Paxton Lynch, being cut a couple 2-3 years later, whatever it was, high-round picks, you got a 2 or 3 year shelf life probably before, like, if you don't show something, they're going to move on from you. And I don't think, like, Williams, Zach, is in a particularly high risk situation of losing his roster spot, but he is in kind of this weird gray zone, danger zone where he just wasn't good last year, dude. Like his yards per carry down, like Eric talks about, running into blockers on the reg. And so if it kind of stays at that level in training camp while other guys around him are popping, Audric Estime, Samaje Perine, Jaleel McLaughlin, you mentioned Watson, that's when I could see it becoming a possibility. But that's still a big if.
Yeah, well, I'll put it this way to you. What are the odds the Broncos sign Javonte to an extension? Because he is entering a contract year. And I would put that at negligible, Chad. Even if he has a breakout 1,300 yard, as improbable as that is, season and 10 touchdowns, they probably let him walk because running backs are so devalued nowadays. Sean Payton is right to find a cheap 5th-round pick in Audrey Estime, an undrafted free agent, 2 in McLaughlin and Blake Watson. It's almost like a punter or a kicker nowadays. You don't have to use a 1st, 2nd-round pick. You don't have to throw piles of cash at the guy. Just find a suitable component, a sum to the parts in the middle rounds, and you can be able to get by.
Okay, I'm looking here. We got Darren. We got Papa Kendall in the house. Now I'm like, Scott's like, hey, that's Nick's dad. I'm like, what? I already knew that. I know this man. If Scott would have been there last year, he would know this man too. Yeah. Him and his awesome wife, Chris, the creators of the great Nick Kendall and the grandparents of the new baby Kendall. So I'm sure they're loving it. He says, good evening, Jensen. By the way, Darren, thank you for the super chat, big dog. Looking forward to seeing you in September 15th. He says, Chad, I just wanted you to know that Chris and I just purchased our flights to Denver to see the home opener. We are also excited to see you and attend the MHH tailgate meet and greet before the game. Yeah, and Nick and I have arrangements made without talking about stuff publicly. So if I'm sure he's mentioned it to you, so that'll be taken care of and whatnot. We'll deal with it on the other side. But thank you for the super. Can't wait to see you again, Darren.
Yeah, appreciate the super so much, and it's going to be exciting. Can't wait to see Nick out there as well. I mean, from what I understand, he was like 0-8, 0-9 seeing Broncos games, and he snapped that last year. So now we're going to rewrite the new narrative with another win.
Well, and it sounds like too, it's like a mini Kendall family reunion, because at least last time I talked to Nick, plan was to bring his his wife and newborn. So that'll be cool, and I'm sure that's 3/4 of the draw for Darren and Chris making it out to the meet and greet. But give our best to Chris. Thank you, Darren. Much love and respect, man. Okay, so Zach, Andre Smith, I feel like I kind of glossed over him a little quickly. You had the article for us, of course, on the website. Do you think he in any way kind of pushes? Because the presumptive is that it's going to be Cody Barton, right? That starts next to Alex Singleton. Although we know, as you wrote about earlier this week, the undrafted rookie Lavelle Bailey. You've got props being given to Jonas Griffith. Like there's multiple horses in this race for the linebacker gig. How much of a factor is Andre Smith in reality?
I mean, if you look at his split stat wise, he has like 100 career defensive snaps and he has like 1,000 special team snaps. He has one career start, which came last year in Atlanta. He is a backup on defense, a rarely used one, but he is a core special teamer. And I feel like with the way that Sean Payton and Mike Westhoff are emphasizing the league's new kickoff rules, Chad, there's a reason why they targeted Andre Smith, and that's why he has the upper hand for a roster spot.
Yeah, and just the fact that he won his audition, like,
right.
Dude, it is like, especially this time of year when rosters are full, it is not easy to come in on a tryout and actually be offered a contract. But you're right, dude. I think that, as a former 7th round pick, he took a quick look around and went, okay, if I'm going to have any longevity in the league, and some staying power, I need to become a master of something. He made that special teams, and I think you're onto something as far as the new kickoff rules and whatnot.
Yeah, there was a 7-person tryout on Tuesday, and it was including Felipe Franks, the former Gators quarterback, Arkansas quarterback in college. 2-day tryout for Andre Smith. He was the only one that I know of that 7 that got a contract. So again, there's a reason why they picked him up. And if it comes down to Sternad and on Andre Smith, they're the same player, but one is more available and one's not. So I lean towards the available guy, Chad Smith.
Indeed. One of the things I'm hearing from Scott, keeping us in the loop, who was of course in the room last night for MHI, Tom and Luke, not so sure the Broncos have improved in the offseason. And, here's the thing. They're not alone in that. We talked about, Zach, it was either Sunday's show or Monday's show. The Sports Illustrated National at the MMQB basically saying, yeah, the Broncos gave him props, right, for having the guts to do the right things in terms of moving on from Russ, releasing some of the big name vets, moving on from, I should say, and releasing some of the big name vets and, taking a young quarterback in the draft, all those things. On one hand, getting those props, on the other saying, but it still wasn't enough. I'm not so sure of that. I think, respectfully to not only our MMQB colleagues on the national side of things, Zach, but Tom and Luke, not a lot of proven talent on either side of the ball. It's a lot of young guys. And so that makes people a little uncomfortable when, like, what appears to be the nucleus of your team as it's developing here are a lot of guys who don't have too many NFL skins on the wall. I get that, but to me, that's also what makes this team, what fills the Broncos, at least 2024 Broncos, with exciting potential. And Sean Payton has used this verbiage here, Zach, a few times during the OTA process at the podium, and especially the last couple 2-3 weeks. But that there's just something different. There's a different vibe. There's a different energy. There's a different pep to step. And how it's somehow become more about the team, which implies, I guess, that maybe with some of the previous veterans, it had become maybe more about them. I'm not sure. That's not what he was trying to say, but it's kind of by default, it's what it implies. But I kind of lean into that. Now, I also balance that, Zach, with the pragmatic understanding that, that they're in a tough division. And it got even tougher, not only, Zach, by virtue of the Chiefs winning yet another Super Bowl, but bringing in an adult to coach, Justin Herbert in LA. Like it's and getting a schedule that is only 20th ranked in terms of strength of schedule, but it's a deceptive 0.495, the combined winning percentage of their opponents from last year. That's not telling the whole story, but I'm still hopeful in this team. I still feel some positivity and energy, and especially if things go as we hope and Bo Nix does enough to earn the job.
Sean had a couple quotables this week at the podium. He was talking about that someone asked the context of whether he feels like he wants to give the middle finger to his critics or whatever. And he's like, I have two middle fingers. I've learned not to use them. And then yesterday he was talking about his first year in Denver. He was, I'll say the PG version, he was urinating into the trees, and he's not doing that anymore. And you
Like
can
marking
tell
his territory.
exactly. And he's more calm, relaxed. You can tell like his culture is taking effect. You can tell the teams where he wants them. He has his quarterback now. So it's very positive in that department. I can speak, and I've torn down these false narratives, the negativity, the biases. We've done that on multiple podcasts. I can't speak to anything that Tom or Luke said last night. They're entitled to their opinion. I know that we have a slight difference of opinion on this show, Chad.
Eric Smith on Facebook, random question, trying to make it to the week 2 for the game. The meet and greet. Anyone know if there are legit places to get tickets without having to spend an arm and a leg that is not Ticketmaster? Well, it is the NFL, Eric. So unfortunately, that's just kind of the way it goes, unless you're able to get in on the single day ticket sales. But one thing I found doing these meet and greets for the last 3 years is the first time I did it, Zach, I spent a boatload of money on tickets to make sure, myself, a few of the guys, maybe one or two of the community members could get into the game, etc. And then I realized while I'm there, the first meet and greet, I don't really need to do that because tickets are ubiquitous. They're all over the place once you're there. So like I would tell you this, Eric, and I don't, it's not necessarily something I'm advising, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm not going to buy a ticket before I go. All right. I'm just going to show up. I'm going to drive down. I'm going to be at the stadium and I will find a ticket. A ticket will come to me. And if that doesn't happen for you per se, Eric, you got dudes running around that stadium all day long. And tickets. Yeah. You can find a ticket, my dog. So if you're getting a little sticker shocked, keep that in mind.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Chad said. If you do want to go the online route or purchasing it beforehand, Eric, I have had good luck with TickPick. We're not sponsored. I'm just shouting that out.
We have before though. They have sponsored the show in the past.
Sure. Also, SeatGeek, as one of the comments, MBLX Test Prep says, SeatGeek's pretty good as well. I would avoid Ticketmaster. The upcharge on them is kind of crazy.
Yeah. So good luck with that, my dog. We look forward to hopefully seeing you though. That's for sure. Make sure you come up and introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see here. We're at about 22 minutes. We're doing pretty good, guys. Any specific topics? Get it in the chat, like this cat right here. George, not a topic, but much love and respect to you. Always supporting on Facebook. Great pod, guys. I'd like to thank you for keeping us up informed on the team day to day. You got it, bro. We'll keep doing that as long as you keep showing up. Same to you, William Israel. Really appreciate you listening and being there, my friend. Okay, Zach, a few things. Should we find the quote? Well, I'll put a pin in that. One last thing while I'm still here kind of on this screen where I had the Lombardi quote talking about Bo Nix. Where does Pete Carmichael fit into the hierarchy? Because when the Broncos, first of all, when the Saints moved on from longtime Sean Payton, top lieutenant and offensive coordinator of the Saints, I mean, for years, they move on from him. We knew it was a matter of course before Sean Payton would rope him back and, they'd be reunited. But the question was, all right, what job description does Pete Carmichael have? And we know what his job title is. It's something like senior offensive assistant or whatever. But is he going to be eating out of Lombardi's bowl? Are they going to be splitting duties like you see a lot of these kind of newfangled West Coast teams, West Coast offense, that is, where you got a run game coordinator, you got a pass game coordinator. It's going to be like that. Well, here's what Lombardi said, quote, "It's good to have someone to pick on. We've been together so long," talking about Pete Carmichael. There are just certain things that come up that we have such common experiences with as you're working through how you want to attack a defense or how you want to solve a problem. We've kind of been through that together. So it's good to have another guy that's been with us so long that can help paint the picture for some of the new guys. It's a real comfort level when you speak the same language and you've been through the wars together. It's sure helpful, close quote. So not a specific, Zach, description of exactly what Pete Carmichael's responsibilities are. But clearly, when you hear senior attached to his title, he's involved everything offense.
Just also means he's known Sean Payton for quite a while to get that job title, Chad. And he's a sounding board, just like Davis Webb is a sounding board, Peyton Manning, John Elway, they're sounding boards. So Sean Payton's definitely surrounded. But we don't want a situation like we saw with Nathaniel Hackett where he had a coach coaching the coaches. At some point, there's too many cooks in the kitchen. Fortunately, all roads lead back to Sean Payton. So as long as he's the one with his hands on the quarterback, as long as he's the one calling plays and helping with the game plan, I'm not worried about, too many voices in the room.
It was also interesting to shift gears. We got to hear from Vance Joseph. I think, all these assistants for the first time since the new league year opened. And he was asked about a couple of questions specific to the competition at cornerback 2, opposite of Pat Surtain, and then was specifically asked about Riley Moss, Damari Mathis, which at least for now are probably the 2 leaders in the clubhouse for that spot. And, Moss has received some daps from Payton. He's received some good notes from the media who have observed practices. But here's what Vance Joseph said on Riley Moss, Damari Mathis, kind of especially in Mathis's case, I think bouncing back, but in Moss's case, actually having the rope to be able to show what he can do and contribute because he spent so much of his rookie year injured. But here's what he said, quote, Vance Joseph, with Riley, he is an exceptional athlete. He makes it look easy. He's smooth. He's mature. He's smart, has great size and great ball skills. When you watch him play, it looks really easy, and he's always in a comfortable position. Damari, I've been impressed with his technique and eye placement. He has physical traits that most corners don't have. He has power. He has quickness. He has size. So his thing was just upping his football IQ, and he's done that. So it should be a good competition in the fall in training camp, but obviously we need more than 3 corners. You need 4, maybe 5 guys, so it's good to see both young guys grow, close quote. So, Zach, it sounds like both guys have shown some growth in the eyes of the coaching staff.
It's just hard to take VJ at face value when he speaks in platitudes all the time, Chad. He said nothing there. And if you went back a year, I promise you, he said the same things about the same players that were on the roster at that time. It's a show me business. And I want to see it with Riley Moss. I want to see it with Damari Mathis. Most importantly, I want to see it with Vance Joseph. You can make the case, and we have plenty of times, at least I have, that he should have been fired at some point, if not after the 2023 season. He's lucky that he has a job still. So I want to see no more 70 burgers, no more last-minute crunch time collapses. I want him to prove why he should still have a job, and Jim Leonard, for example, shouldn't, as DC.
It's interesting, too, that you bring up Jim Leonard because he was obviously a veteran safety. He really shined when he got his opportunity to play with Rex Ryan, but he was also a returner. People forget that he was also a returner, and so he was asked, Payton, on what kind of resource Leonard can be for the Broncos special teams returners, and he said, "quote He did a lot, and he will be leaned on in all of those areas. He really had a good career and was part of a lot of winning teams too." The Jets, I remember competing against the Jets, and he had 2 really good seasons there. He was part of those teams with Rex in Baltimore and here. He was at a few stops, but when you play that long, he's doing something right, close quote. So, and then he goes on to talk a lot about his first impressions of Jim Leonard coming in as not only Zach, the DB's coach, but the, quote, defensive pass game coordinator. That is something that continuously is getting glossed over. He's also the defensive passing game coordinator. So, it's kind of I don't know. When I was saying earlier about Pete Carmichael, is he going to be eating out of Joe Lombardi's bowl? Well, we know Jim Leonard is going to be eating out of Vance Joseph's bowl a little bit just by virtue of his title designation.
And what was VJ's background before becoming a coordinator, Chad? He was a defensive backs coach. So it kind of says something that Damari Mathis now looks better with Jim Leonard coaching him and not, VJ or Christian Parker for that matter. I'll say one thing before we hit Michaela really quickly, Chad. Maybe except for Sean Payton, Jim Leonard was the Broncos' best coaching hire in the post-Peyton Manning era. I still can't believe they landed him in that role. Great get.
Yeah, he wanted to come to Denver, and that's, it's the Broncos went from being under I'll give some credit to Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow helped kind of put the Broncos into the national zeitgeist, but Peyton Manning took them over the top. And it became real easy to recruit guys. Like if you're John Elway, that 2014, for example, free agent class where you rope in Aqib Talib, DeMarcus Ware, Emmanuel Sanders, missing a big one. Who is it? TJ Ward. Those guys in most cases, maybe with the exception, no, Talib took, I remember, a slightly lesser deal. They all took a little bit less to come play in Denver. The Broncos, obviously, Zach, they fell out of favor from a recruiting perspective when you stack 8 straight years of missing the playoffs. But it's also encouraging to see from at least a coaching recruiting side of things that like Sean Payton still is he's a big draw for coaches.
And players. I mean, they've signed some big fish in the free agent market the last couple seasons, Chad. You talk about the offensive lineman. You talked about, Zach Allen getting him, trading for John Franklin Myers, who talked about him wanting to come to Denver and facilitating that deal. I don't think that would have happened with Hackett as head coach or VJ as head coach or Vic Fangio as head coach.
We've got the Duchess checking in. Michaela Parker, we love you. Thank you so much for the super chat this Thursday evening. She says, hi, my boys. I have a good feeling about the direction the team is heading toward. Might not be this year, but soon. Love you. We love you too. And I got to tell you, there have been certain points when Michaela's not feeling it. You know what I'm saying? You're never left in doubt on how Michaela is, the vibe she's feeling with the team. And it's really interesting to see, if you recall, Zach, we go back in time just a little bit. And our religious community members that are in every chat, they'll remember this, where, somewhere around the Justin Simmons release, if memory serves, she was like, guys, I'm on the brink. Like, I can't take this anymore. Like, what the heck? I can't live through a multi-year rebuild. Like, I'm on the brink. And together we kind of eased through it and past it. And here she is feeling good about the direction of the team. And I love it. I love it. So good for you, Michaela. I share your outlook. And I'm happy for you.
Yeah, I was thinking the same, and it was more recently. Michaela, correct me if I'm wrong, but right before the draft, she was feeling very negative and skeptical about the Broncos' future and Sean Payton. Then they got Bo Nix, and suddenly Michaela's feeling much better. So I love that for you, Michaela. I love that for so many fans in Broncos country who feel the same way. That hope again, Chad, that rejuvenation is back.
It's that also, Zach, the confidence that it gives you that this is a team now being led by guys whose relative kind of discernment you can trust. I was really worried that the Broncos would step on their what's in the draft and like take a linebacker or a corner. Then you would have people just running for the exit. They're like, okay, well, that telegraphs where this season's going. Like, we got nothing to look forward to. Zach Wilson's like the best we could muster as far as our hope of the short and the long term. But Sean Payton knew that, hey, I don't have my guy. And he got his guy. And the more time that passes, Zach, have you had a chance to go back and check out that Jay Glazer pod with Sean Payton yet?
I saw snippets, but I didn't watch the full thing. I got kind of the gist of it, though.
Dude, is it absolute proof? No, because, the conspiratorial mind can think of a lot of different ways that what was kind of let slip throughout that conversation could have been strategized by them both. But I think they're a little bit too busy to be worried about trying to do stuff like that. And it's clear that Bo Nix, what some of the haters don't want to hear it, but Zach, Bo Nix was always Sean Payton's guy. Now, maybe some of that had to do with the expectation of where Bo Nix might fall, right? Like if the Broncos had a reasonable shot, for example, let's say a Caleb Williams or a Drake May or even a Jaden Daniels, maybe they would have taken one of those guys. I don't know, but we know, I'm telling you, go watch that Jay Glazer podcast and you will learn with maybe not, again, absolute proof, Zach, but significant confidence that Sean Payton and the Broncos targeted Nix. He was the guy. He was literally, Sean Payton floats an idea to Jay Glazer, and he's like, yo, I want to make sure, like, when it's all said and done and I get Bo Nix, I want to be able to say and have proof that Bo Nix was always my guy. I don't want to be doubted on that. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to show up at his house to tell him we're drafting you at number 12, day of the draft. And Glazer's like, yo, you don't do that. Like, I don't know how serious that actual thing was as far as Sean Payton thinking about just like showing up to Bo Nix's house to announce you're the guy. But it goes to show you that the forethought was there, Zach, long before the draft, that was their guy. And Chris Hernandez jumping in, brother, with an OG vintage Huddle Up podcast mask. This is a little time capsule profile pic here, Zach. This is when we first released the mugs. And everybody rocking, the face mask thing. We all know we can date when that began, right? 2020, good times for us. Bad year for humanity, good times for us. I have a lot of fond memories of the podcast and the community and just the whole thing that off season leading up. Where we're going to have a season, whatnot. But much love and respect. Thank you, Chris, for the super. Hope to see you at the meet and greet. And if not this one, hopefully the next one.
We throw legend around a lot, but Chris definitely embodies that. So happy to see you, Chris, in every podcast that we can. Appreciate your support as always. And just tack on something about Bo Nix really quickly. That's why I laugh at the QB6 criticism that the Broncos, overdrafted Bo Nix. What they did was follow about 4 other teams in the first round, I guess 5 other teams, in a window that was closing quickly, and they just got through that window by taking Bo Nix where they did. And we're going to come back on this decision, Chad, kind of like where Patrick Mahomes, I'm not saying he's going to be Mahomes, but in terms of the draft slotting and him going where he went, I think a lot of people will change their tune after his first season.
It's true. I do too. And by the way, Chris, this is a guy real quick. So Chris and I, we have a lot in common above and beyond, not just the Broncos, band guys playing in bands when we were younger and whatnot. And this is a great dad. Let me tell you how great this dad is. This dad not only raised one of his kids to also be into playing music, but very encouraging and like supportive of his kid who has a band going out and trying to make it and find ways to succeed and whatnot. Like, you're the type of dad for musicians that they like, most of them wish their dad was like. So like, props to you on that, Chris. Instead of like, no, it'll never come true, go to college or get a job. Like, don't get your hopes up. That's what most musicians hear from their parents, when they're trying to like get out there and make it a thing. So that positivity, that mentality, it's a huge asset for your boy and his band. So props to you, Chris.
Great Broncos fan, even better person, Chad.
Indeed. All righty. We're at almost 40 minutes. So guys, burning topics, get them in the chat. We probably won't stick for the full 60 minutes. I mean, that's kind of, Zach, been the MO of late, when the off season, the material of things to talk about maybe starts to run out a little as far as the actual newsworthy talking points. We keep it like around 40, 45 maybe. But what do you think? Are there any topics that we haven't hit that we need to touch on?
Sutton, probably.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Your thoughts on him? Not exactly. I mean, I don't know what people expected. He hasn't participated in anything all off season, but he shows up to the mandatory minicamp and people are a little bit disappointed that he doesn't maybe look so great, and he spends a lot of his time on the sideline because they're not trying to just throw him in right away and whatnot. Some of the things he said at the podium. What do you make of Courtland Sutton's return?
Well, a lot of pearls were being clutched because he had a drop in practice, but it was his first practice since the end of the season. He's coming off ankle surgery, so he's going to be a little rusty. I'm not worried about that. He'll shake it off. I was a little concerned with his verbiage that he used, Chad, and he was basically leaving the door open for a holdout in training camp. He used the word standoff a few times, which I thought was a little noteworthy, and he said that he hopes to have a positive resolution, but he said he's only here because he doesn't want to get fined, in other words. So right. This is not over yet.
Mm-hmm. So, for example, when we heard him last week confirm, I'll be at mandatory minicamp, and then he waxed poetic about how hard it's been for him to not be at OTAs and like how much he loves football and all that. It's like, we don't doubt that you love football, my dog. But now you see that, it's about the money, and that's fine. Like, that's okay. I mean, if I were him, it would be about the money too. That verbiage, the standoff thing, I go back, Zach, for now to two things besides Sutton saying what he's saying. Sean Payton, along every stop of Sutton's absence from the offseason training program, was like, hey, it's nothing to worry about. It'll take care of itself. reporting from insiders like Jeremy Fowler saying basically the same thing, and that it's expected to be resolved near training camp. But this goes to show you, though, Zach, he is a little bit dug in. So, like, if anything, it's just more, it's posturing, right? Things, any kind of negotiation, the little steps of posture have to be established in order to maintain whatever that kind of balance is. And it signals to the Broncos anyway this week, Zach, that, hey, yeah, I'm serious about this. I maybe didn't show up, or pardon me, I maybe showed up because I didn't want to get fined. But when it comes to training camp, if there's no progress, I'll go ahead and accept some of those fines because I want what I want.
He thinks he has leverage, and he does to an extent because he's coming off a career-high 10 touchdown season, Chad. He's the number one receiver. He knows the Broncos don't have another player like him, but the Broncos also are holding their ground. They're making him honor the contract that he signed, and they're not budging on giving him more guarantees. I'm still not too worried if this doesn't have a resolution in terms of a revised deal by training camp, then I'll press the panic button again. But I hope it gets done, Chad.
One thing I'd be saying to Cortland Sutton, if I worked for the Broncos, whether as a coach or whatever, is I'd be like, yo, think about this, Cortland. When the Broncos hired Sean Payton, what are the first things you thought of as an bona fide receiver? You probably went back in time and you're thinking about Marcus Colston. You're thinking about the slant god, Michael Thomas, and just all the proliferation of production that anyone who played the X in his system seemed to have over the years. And then, the quarterback thing doesn't go so smooth in his first year. Russ isn't the greatest fit for Sean. And yet you still end up with 10 touchdowns by virtue. Sure, a good reason for that, of the sweat of your own brow and your unique talents for coming up big in the clutch and all that. Not to take that away from him, Zach, but I'd be like, now imagine he got his guy in the draft. He got Bo Nix. He got a guy he feels like can be like Drew Brees and go out and operate his scheme and da-da-da-da-da. That's a tide that's going to float your boat. You know what I'm saying, Cortland? You think 10 touchdowns was something. I mean, but still, dude, 700 receiving yards, nobody's writing home about that. That's why you didn't make another Pro Bowl. But in this scheme with this coach and this quarterback, those things could be changing. So, like, keep that in mind, big dog. That's a message I'd be sure before he leaves the facility, he's hearing from somebody.
I just think to an extent he's overvaluing himself. He sees himself as a bona fide. Thank you, Bronc. As always, great show tonight. Chad and Zach on the MHH podcast. Go Broncos. Thank you again. I just think he puts himself in the same tier as like a Stephon Diggs or Jamar Chase or Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb, and he's not. That we talked about this, I think, a week ago, Chad. He's a very high-end number 2, low-end number 1, but he wants to be paid like at least a mid-end number 1. And if you give him $2-3 more million, it vaults him into territory that the true alpha number 1 receivers are making. So it's a tough situation for all involved. That's why the standoff is taking place.
I think it'll get worked out just fine. And if it takes him, getting fined a couple of days, whatever, missing training camp for a day or two, it'll come out in the wash. I'm not that worried about it. And honestly, Zach, if he was asking for the world, I'd be more concerned about it. But what's he asking for? According to reports, wants another $2.5 to $3 million on his salary. And he wants more of that salary, at least this year anyway, guaranteed. $2.5 million to $3 million raise for this team. No problem. They can find ways to do it with a sketch, piece of paper. They can just, they don't need to crunch the numbers. They don't need to get uber creative and pull out every stop of the salary cap voodoo. You can get that done. But just like with everything, Zach, you go, well, if it's that easy, Chad, why hasn't it already happened? Well, as is the way of the NFL, man, the language, the love language, so to speak, is money. And that those things don't get uttered until they're up against a deadline, period, end of story. Just like you saw, Cortland Sutton didn't show up till when? Till he was at risk of being fined. The money talks. And the same thing will apply on the other side, Zach, relative to training camp. The Broncos, that's when things get serious. That's when the season starts in earnest. They want their horses in the stable. Let's go. That's when you'll see a movement on this, and I think they'll take care of him and get him in.
I want to kind of try to answer your question if I could. Why hasn't this been resolved? Because we really don't know what Cortland Sutton's asking for. We're going off of one report from Jeremy
True.
Fowler, and maybe that report came from Sutton's camp, which is a little more player friendly. Maybe he's asking for $5 million more, $7 million more. We don't know, and that's why we have to let this play out a little longer, unfortunately.
That would complicate matters, Zach. If he is asking for $5 or $7 million, like if he wants to be a $20 million per year guy, that's not going to happen with the Broncos. Like, hopefully he knows that. But you know, in a negotiation, Zach, you start high, knowing, you know, that when it finally comes to wherever you agree, it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle. So if you really want, for example, Zach, 16 million per year, then ask for 20. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's the idea. Chef, what's up, Chef Evo? I'm not sure exactly how, but great to see you. Just as we're about to sign off. Says, I finally caught y'all live. MHH for life. Zach, I looked everywhere for that, including up and down 16th Street. Please shed light on where I can find it, bro. Love y'all. Keep cooking. Is he talking about? Oh, the hat. Yeah. What do you got for him?
I was trying to see if it was on the inside. It's not. I found this online, Chef, a few years ago. It's not the first question I've got on it. It is hard to find this color combination. It was some random website, and I know I'm not helping much right now. If I can think of it, for sure. I don't know. If you can tune in the next pod, I'll have an answer for you, but I'll look it up. I'll leave it in the comments. How about that? So,
dude, you're right, because I just Googled it, and there's a million D, billion D, 11 D, 1,000 D of the old D and that color blue, where the whole hat is that color.
This one's rare,
but not with the orange bill. And I have one of those too. I don't ever wear it because it's a little bit like, I've worn it in the yard one too many times, so it's got some of those like sweat stains. It's kind of grody. But it's like from 12 years ago. I bet I've had that hat a decade, dude. So I couldn't even begin to remember where I got it. But yeah, Zach will keep you in the loop on that, Chef, if he can find something. But appreciate you, bro. Good to see you. And with that, guys, we got a couple of messages for you. Then we're going to dip on out of here.
Can't believe 47 minutes and counting. You guys are incredible as always. That was the MHH podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on Twitter at the MHH pod. You can follow the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle, Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch, like we're talking about hats, but we have hoodies, we have t-shirts, we have everything you can imagine, mhhmerch.com. Check that out. If you haven't done so, please drop us a like at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. You can find us on Instagram at mile_high_huddle. If you're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your Football Priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some of that merch each and every single month. But if anything, y'all, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
Much love and respect to the great Super Chat superstars and supporters helping us keep the lights on here halfway through the month of June as Sean Payton cuts everybody loose a day early. We got the Papa Bear, David McElrath. We got Sam Bam. We got the Ronk. We got Phil McLaughlin. We got Papa Kendall. We got George Fox. We got the Duchess, Michaela Parker, Chris Hernandez, and Chef jumping in. Chef Ivo. I'm going to say Ivo. Much love and respect. We'll be back in the saddle, Zach and I, Sunday night. Can't wait. But in the meantime, you've got some Dove Valley Deep Divers tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Eastern, followed by the Orange and Blue View on Saturday night. So have a great weekend, everybody. Can't wait to see you on Sunday.
Have a great weekend. We'll see you Sunday. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.